Hey there, folks. Chris McLean back again. And my guest on the show today is Jonathan from Leafe Consultancy. And Jonathan guides digital and creative agency owners to business and personal success with performance coaching. Sounds very, very familiar. He had his own agency for nearly 30 years, and he sold it to an MBO at 40 staff and £2 million. Reading that GBP, Great British Pounds, 2 million quid. Sort of, as he says, he's been there, he's got the t-shirt, and now he's passing on all of that knowledge gained to his clients all over the UK and Ireland. Jonathan, thanks for dropping by, mate. Great to have you here.
Yeah. Good morning, Chris. Well, I say good morning. It's good morning here, but I think probably a bit later in the day for you. So yeah,
good
to see you.
Good evening, good afternoon. It's a bit Truman Show here on the show. Sort of global audience, so we never quite know. People are all over the place, but good that we can connect the way that we do these days, and people are used to jumping on Zoom calls. So yeah, appreciate you swinging by. So you're coaching now. You run an agency. To hear about that agency part of the journey, and then we'll sort of come full cycle to where you're at now and sort of who and how you're helping. But I'd love to hear about that sort of 30 years in agency. When did that begin? What type of agency did you run, and how did that go all the way through to sort of exit and then transitioning into coaching?
Yeah, sure. Well, I suppose my agency journey started. Well, I probably need to explain where I started, because I was in a band. I was in a band for 3 years. So I was a professional musician was my first job, and we toured like the UK and Europe, and that sort of got me into the promotional side of the band, because I really enjoyed doing that. And then when the band finished, I went to Spain for 6 months just to sort of like to chill and to learn Spanish at the same time. And then when I got back to the UK, I thought, well, I need another job, doing something interesting. And I actually got a job in an advertising agency. Knew nothing about it really. I'd never been in an agency. And I got a job as an account executive. So I was working on some big stuff. But bearing in mind, this was like 1985, 86. So it really was completely 100% pre-digital. So I got to see all copywriters, typesetters, designers, art workers, proofreaders, all of that sort of stuff. So I really sort of like got a good grounding. And then that job abruptly finished because the company lost a huge account and basically closed. So within a few months, I worked there about a couple of years. Within a few months, I was back in Spain as a marketing manager for a hotel, using my Spanish. And that's really, I did that for 3 years. But in the last year, when I was getting something organized for some print organized for the hotel, I went down to the suppliers, and in the corner of the room there was a little Apple Mac. Of course, I'd never seen one before. I mean, in fact, I'd never even used a computer. And I saw the guy manipulating the type on the Apple Macintosh, and I thought, hang on a minute, I can do that. So I came back to the UK in 1989, spent about £14,000, and that was the value back in those days, on a Macintosh, a printer, a scanner, a big screen. You didn't get much for your money in those days. And I got the grand total of 4 megabytes of RAM and a 40 megabyte hard drive for that money.
Wow, but 14 grand. Wow.
Photoshop, Illustrator, Quark Express, and started doing everything digitally. So that was 1989. And so fast forward to 1993, and started the business Strawberry. And by that stage, we were completely digital, really doing all of the artwork. And we built our first website in 1996. So again, very early adopters on that. And to be honest, when we'd done that, I saw the writing on the wall. So this is just going to take off like crazy. And probably within about 5 to 10 years, I would say, on the journey, we changed what we did quite a few times. But we were building big websites, e-commerce. We were doing the creative around that, and we're doing the marketing around that. So fast forward to 3 years ago, 2017, 4 years ago now, and I exited the business to a management buyout, which was planned, by the way. We'd been planning it for 10 years, so everybody knew what was going to happen. And I wanted to get out when I was sort of like mid-50s, so I could do what I'm doing now, which is coaching. It's the best job I've ever had. I absolutely love it, and I think really my life was leading to this, really. So yeah, it's nice to be out the trenches and sort of like taking an overview.
Where did that coaching passion come from? Did you build that in the agency, sort of coaching staff and team? Is that sort of, did it build from that, or did it come from somewhere external?
No, very much so, from the agency, because my philosophy always was we build from internally. So learning by doing. We got a lot of apprentices, first job graduates, and basically it was our mission to make them the very best we could do. So that was training, bringing them on, promoting them. And probably my proudest moment of my journey is that when I left Strawberry, 20 of the people that were still at Strawberry had started their careers at Strawberry, which is I think it's an amazing feat, but everybody bought into it, you know. And I'm now coaching a couple of the girls I worked with started as apprentices 10 years ago, and they started their own design creative agency, and I'm back to like working for them, which is really run, and to see how they've progressed and grown up, and it's just fabulous.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that's quite a journey, and amazing to see you've sort of trained and bought those people capable and able to go onto their own things, but then you're also able to sort of flip it on the end there and provide support in the different guys.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, really fulfilling.
Yeah, and at the same time, when I was in the last 10 years, I was volunteering to mentor first startups, and I was also volunteering at the school I used to go to, because they used to run a young enterprise. I don't know if that happens in Australia, but it's where the sixth formers start a business and run it for a year, and they need an outside business advisor. I mean, they trade. So I did that for 7 years and had some great success with that, and subsequently became a governor at the school as well. So I mean, for me, education and training and learning by doing in particular is all what I'm about.
Yeah, is that kind of how you built the agency in the first place? You sort of had a bit of background, but leaning into technology, and when you found that first Macintosh, you obviously had to go and learn how to do that, right? You had to. Did you self-teach all the way through? I mean, you kind of had to back then, right? There weren't agency coaches. There weren't, a lot of marketing coaches and that sort of thing back then. It was, if you want to do this, pick it up and go for it. How did you find that, especially late 80s? Early 90s, picking up.
Bearing in mind, Chris, the truth is, I'd never touched a computer before I opened the Macintosh and switched it all on. And literally, I had a mountain of books to read, because that's how you did it in those days. And you had to load the software on. It's not like software in the cloud. We didn't even have an internet connection. The World Wide Web wasn't really invented.
It was floppy disks.
So, I had to learn Quark Express from 5 manuals, Photoshop from 5 manuals, Illustrator from 5 manuals, and just went through it. And it's trial by combat, really, to be honest. No one else was doing it. We were probably the first in the north of England to do what we were doing. So we were pioneering, I have to say.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, Quark Express. I completely forgot about that platform. But even we used that for publishing back in the day, sort of pre Adobe.
InDesign,
InDesign, sort of the precursor to InDesign. Yeah, wow. I'd forgotten about Quark. That's some old school right there.
But it was brilliant, as we know Photoshop was. I mean, Photoshop was just outstanding. But of course, trying to run those softwares in really a very, very underpowered machine was a challenge. Your machine used to crash at least 3 or 4 times a day. I mean, one of the first experiences I had, I built this 140 page magazine, and we'd finished it pretty much ready to go to the printers. And we, I mean, you didn't know anything in those days about backup or anything like that. Anyway, it crashed, and we lost it. That was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then 3 of us volunteered and said, right, okay, well, let's do it again. And we started at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We finished at 7 o'clock the next morning. So, and that never happened again, by the way.
You do that once, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's learning by doing. You know, that's half the
Mm.
fun of it, really. And you know, we were at that age where we didn't care. You know, we just got on with it.
Yeah, it's crazy. We can't fathom that was the way that you had to. I mean, I remember even in 2002, 3, hand coding sites in Dreamweaver, and you know.
Yeah, well, the machines, obviously, the power of the machines now is, well, it's just exponential. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of times faster and larger than we had. And the internet connection, like we're talking now, it just wasn't even dreamed of. So it was a really interesting journey. So from a Strawberry perspective, you know, I think one of the strengths that we had is we were always looking what's next. And I still have that for the clients that I deal with now. Part of the coaching is say, well, we know where we are. We know where we've come from. You know, well, what's coming next? And for our clients, what's coming next for us? You know, what do we need to learn? What do we need to be innovating in? What do we need to be introducing our clients into? So it's really changed how everything's going. And that's really probably what I do mainly with the clients, is I get them to see much further than they've ever done before. You know, prior to my intervention, I guess a lot of them just tend to see, well, we can only predict what we can see, but actually I say, well, no, you can do much more than that. And I try and get them to build a much more stable business that's got greater longevity, more predictability, which leads into more profitability, etc. So yeah, so that's what I'm doing now, and I'm absolutely loving it.
So yeah, I think that's a really interesting point that can kind of get caught lost in the trees, right? Can't see the forest for the trees when you're kind of in the trenches building your agency, and it's kind of month to month, week to week. You're sort of trying to get clients, then you're trying to deliver, then you can get very nearsighted when you're sort of functionally doing the agency day on day. So I think it's really important to get to take that kind of 40,000 foot view. And have someone say, well, what's 3 years out? What's 5 years out? What's 10 years out? And kind of start, and then how do you bring that analysis, sort of trying to get those insights and sort of see where's the industry going, where's technology moving. That's the massive thing right now, where technology is moving, and trying to catch up and leverage that and get ahead of it.
I think I mean, again, it all depends on the agency that I'm working with, but generally from a point of view of what you mentioned there, the 40,000 foot view, is we know where they've come from. We know what the last year looked like. We know what 2 years looked like, and we know what the next 3 months looks like. But actually, it's not that hard once you start to dig deep to say, well, actually, we can push that out a little bit further to 6 months, and then 12 months becomes quite easy to have a look at. And then you start, well, 2 years is quite easy to have a look at, and within 3 to 6 months, with all the clients I work with, we've got like a 5 to 10 year plan. Because what I try and get the agency owners to think as well, which I think is not really well talked about, is what's the end game? You know, and I was lucky. I sort of cottoned onto this pretty early, and so, well, I need to have an end game, and I designed my own end game, and so I built the business to basically support that end game, and that's what I try and do with my clients. And I said, well, what's your wealth plan? Because you don't want to do this just for what you earn this month or what you earn this year. You know, you've got to be building your business so it's actually providing you with some wealth for you and your family, or whatever, for the future. And I think this is not something that many people consider, in all honesty, and they really should, and they can. That's
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation I've had a couple of times quite recently, sort of on the show, is this idea that a lot of particularly newer agencies, again, this is a gross generalization, a lot of new agencies can get caught up in that kind of Instagram version of a 7-figure business in 30 days or 6 figures in 90 days, and they buy into that and they start the agency because I can do Facebook ads, right? I can run Facebook ads, so I'm going to do a Facebook agency, and I'm going to get some VAs, and I'm going to scale, I'm going to do 7 figures in the next 30 days. And they kind of buy into that Instagram version of what a business actually is, without, they said, actually sitting down and going, what do I actually, and am I the right person to run and grow a 7-figure business, right? Because that is an undertaking.
Yeah.
It's a much bigger undertaking than, look, I'd be happy if I did 120 grand a year, that support me and my family. That's 5-6 figures a month. That's pretty good. I could do 10, 12 grand a month. That'd support my lifestyle, help my family out. Maybe that's all I want. But it's really important just to be intentional at that front end, right? Or at some point in the business to sit down and go, where actually am I taking this thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely vitally important, because the thing about it is, Chris, is that if you actually approach your business with that attitude, it makes it a lot easier, because everything starts to be planned, everything's got a route, rather than just going from day to day, month to month. And yeah, you're absolutely right. And the thing about it is that has become a bit of a thing. There are some agencies that growth exponential, and everybody looks at them and thinks they can do that, and maybe they can, but actually it's a small percentage that actually ever achieve that, in all honesty. I reckon in all the 10 agencies that I'm working with at the moment, because I limit myself to 10 clients, I am pretty sure that if given 5 to 10 years, I can get them exited to exactly what they want at that time. We just have to, because it focuses the mind on the planet and exactly what they need to do, get the right clients, get the right processes, get the right team, all of those sort of things, charging the right amount of money, doing the right things, looking what's coming next. And it's actually just becomes more of a project that you work on, rather than sort of like the emotional part of running a business. If you can sort of get rid of the emotion, it makes it a lot easier to actually plan your future.
Yeah, I really like that idea. I mean, we can get so emotionally tied to our business right now, our thing. But yeah, like that, and I'm going to build a 7-figure agency or an 8-figure agency. At some point, maybe you've got to give away some equity, or you've got to look at what an exit actually looks like. What does a buyout actually mean for me? And there's ego that starts to get built in, and there's emotional stuff that comes up. So if you're not prepared for that pretty early, or you're not prepared for, this is actually what I'm taking it here, I've been building for that, I've prepared for it mentally and emotionally to do that thing when it comes around. I think that can probably trip a lot of people up, right? You sort of
100%, Chris. I mean, the thing is, if you haven't got this nailed in your 40s, you're well behind. Because you need time to do this. I mean, I was very clear with the guys that I was mentoring, James and Dom. 10 years to, I said 10 years to go. You've got to buy into the agency now. We want you to stay on board. We're going to build a business together, and then in 10 years' time, this agency will be yours, and on this basis. And that's exactly what happened. And now they're running the agency very successfully. They've changed it, which is great. It's not the agency that I left, but that's the whole idea. Agencies move on. So I'm really proud that they've taken it on and done what they like with it, because that's the whole point. And they'll make a great success of it. But you must start planning early. And what you mentioned about equity is vitally important, because you must bring senior people on. You can't do it together. You've got to almost like, it's the old adage, let go to grow. You've got to bring other people in. You've got to be taking a bit more of a visionary stance and less work in the trenches. You've got to look at the eagle tasks that you must do, that only you can do. That in itself is a challenge for anybody to do, because it's a change of mindset. But if you manage to do it, and actually it's just really not that difficult. It just takes time. And hence that's why from my coaching, and probably it's the same as you, Chris, is that you just get people to understand themselves a bit more. And then they can start looking at the agency as this project, this entity, and it's a much more pleasant way of actually building a business, in all honesty. And for 30 years, every year we grew, every year we made a really good profit, every year, because we understood the different layers of business. We understood what our projects were, we understood what our retainers, straight regular clients looked like, and we understand we were also building some long-term value, that basically stuff that we just looked after. So we were very clear that our revenue was very predictable. And when we started this journey with Dom and James 10 years ago, we were just about hitting 1 million, and actually getting to the second million was a lot easier than getting to the first, in all honesty.
Yeah. Once you've done one, you can do two, sort of.
Yeah,
Kind of know what it looks like. To get there.
And we became very professional at what we did. We had formal board meetings, we had structures, we had processes, we had systems, all of those sort of things. So we made it much more professional. And to be honest, I mean, yes, there were fragmented arguments from time to time. It's tough running an agency, and clients can be fractious, staff can be fractious. There's so many moving parts to an agency, probably in lots of ways more so than any other business. But that, on top of that, if you've got the core, which is good, then you can manage everything else, and you just manage your way through it.
Yeah, and I like what you're saying. It's so much about coming back to yourself and working on yourself, right? Say that running a business, but particularly running a creative business, an agency business, is the best personal development course you'll ever do.
Well, I mean, Chris, since I've been doing my coaching and working with all these different businesses, I reckon I've accelerated 10 years in my thinking in 3 years. Just because I've got more time, I'm exposed to different businesses, I'm reading a lot more, talking to people like yourselves, and just get nuggets along the way, and you build those into what you're doing and what you're teaching and what you're coaching, and it's great. Every day I learn something and think, wow, I can adopt that. I at least read for probably 2 hours. If not, I'm listening to audio books or blinks or podcasts. There's so much good stuff out there, and there's so much bad stuff, of course. But you've got to accept that. Some days you think, well, I've just wasted 2 hours there, but other days you listen to 5 minutes and you hear a nugget and you think, wow, I can really build that into my business and make a difference to my clients.
Yeah, it only takes one insight, right? One aha moment.
Yeah, that's right.
Talk sort of in the peak performance world, talk a lot about sort of firing up the pattern recognition system, and that's something that our brains are great at, right? And for people in our industry, in creative businesses, creativity that's what we get paid for. Inspiration and creativity is what we get paid for. So it's so important, as you're saying, to have that time to actually have time just to sit and think and ponder, but then also, like saying, reading and adding different narratives and creating new stuff in the brain where the pattern recognition system can go off and years ago, quote I just read today, now I get it, and now I can apply that. That's that's really the essence of creativity, right? It's that ability to link far-flung things together and turn them into something novel. So really important for coaches, but I think that's a really important point for agencies and business owners to give themselves that time to actually step away from the doing stuff and actually let their brains go off and do the stuff that their brains are really good at.
Well, the minute I probably 10 years ago, I started working really hard to organize the agency, so it would sort of like run without me. And I remember about 5 years ago, maybe a bit longer than that, actually, going in, sat on my desk, and I didn't have anything to do. I had literally worked everything through into systems and processes. Everybody knew what they had to do, and I'd completely taken myself out of the running of it. So I just found the next project. So let's say, well, what's the next project for us, which is going to make a difference? And then I started focusing on that and concentrating on that. And and I think as a business owner, and particularly as an agency owner, it's incumbent on you to do this, because if you're still on the tools and still doing stuff, who's developing the agency? Well, there's no one. There's only 3 really important components to an agency: is making sure you've got the right clients. The team choice is great, and they're energized and they're coached, and then working on yourself as a leader. That's important as well. As I said at the start of the meeting, never stop learning by doing. Just be aware of everything that's going on. I think probably one of the advantages that I've got, and I've noticed this a lot of agency owners, I think the ones that actually don't have the formal education seem to be better at this, because they have to be. I left school when I was 16. And I've been self-taught on most things: Spanish, guitar, etc. And I'm very comfortable with learning. I don't need a formal setting. I don't need someone to tell me what. I'm quite happy to go and find out how to do something myself. I'm quite really comfortable with that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I can definitely map to that as well. Again, we were taught on Photoshop or Dreamweaver or anything pre our agency, and then a client said, hey, we need a flash animation. Okay, we better learn to do that. So yeah, it's interesting that's a really that you're seeing that as a core character trait of agency owners, that willingness to learn, that willingness to be a beginner, that sort of like beginner's mind, right?
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
Lifetime learner.
That sort of like that humility and honesty when you're in front of the client, just say, look, we're going to work this problem, whatever your problem is, we might not have seen it before, but we can work it because we've got experience. You don't need to have done everything before. You don't need to be expert at everything. You just don't. You can fill the gaps in by, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. And I think that's where creativity starts, is by seeing who's done it best and can you improve on it. That's the same in the whole world. That's how the world's carried on, and that's how the world's developed, just by someone being good at something and then someone has developed it and made it even better. And it's no different in the agency world. So
it's almost knowing how to think, right? That's just knowing how to think and having that ability to sort of step back, go, we might not know exactly how to do this thing, but we know how to think, we know how to innovate, we'll work it out. We've done harder things before.
And clients are paying you for that. They really are. That's actually what you're selling. If you think you're selling something for a cost, then you're in the commodities market, aren't you? In the agency world, creative agency world, they're paying for our knowledge, our intuition, our creativity, our seeing what's coming around the corner, seeing beyond the horizon. That's what they're paying for, and that's what we've got to be delivering. And that's how those are the agencies that will progress.
I definitely find that the agencies and the owners, as you said, that can create that space to allow that to flourish are the ones that they actually enjoy the process, because they're not trying to push all the time. There's some time out to allow that creativity, that inspiration to come, rather than being busy all the time. And like I said, being on the tools. You can't be growing the business if you're on the tools. And to grow that business, you need to be able to not be in the business and have the business function, so you can step back, like you said, do that kind of 40,000 foot work.
I mean, if there's one sort of like key takeaway from the podcast that I would absolutely sort of like recommend every agency owner does, is just step away from the business. Just take a few days off, but just clear your head and think about the business and look at the important component parts, and make sure that they are tuned to how you want them to be, and keep doing this on a regular basis. It really does work. If you're just immersed in client work and dealing with clients and dealing with staff issues and things like that, you cannot see beyond a week or a month, and that will just take you nowhere. You're just chasing your tail. I learned to fly in my 20s, and my instructor always said, if you're going to take off sensibly, look at the end of the runway. Don't look at 5 feet in front of you, otherwise you start zigzagging down the runway. And that's what you've got to do as an agency, and look as far ahead as you possibly can. And then it just makes life a lot easier, because you can build that perfect agency that you want, and it's got to be for you. You don't need to say do 7 figures or or the 2 million that I did. It's not necessarily necessary, and that might not be for you. But so that's the key takeaway for me.
I love that. Perfect analogy to end on. Look down the runway, don't look 5 foot ahead. I think that's really it's a brilliant analogy that people can really get onto, and having that longer term view is really important to steer the ship in the right way. Exactly. Thank you so much for your time, Jonathan. I want to connect with you, learn more about your coaching. There's a couple of places up on screen, but for those listening, where's the best places for people to come and connect with you?
I guess LinkedIn. My name's obviously Jonathan Leafe. It's quite unique with the spelling, Leafe. I don't think there's another Jonathan Leafe on LinkedIn. I might be wrong, but by all means, just connect on LinkedIn. That's the best place, and I'll always get back to you.
Awesome. I'll drop those links in the show notes, so you can smash those and go connect with Jonathan if you're interested in finding out more about him, more about his consulting. Do you just work inside the UK with your clients?
Well, I am at the moment. But to be honest, anybody who reaches out to me and just wants like half an hour, that's fine by me. I'm more than happy to volunteer. I think sharing good practice is what we do. I've always had good relationship with all my competitors as well, and we just shared. That's what it's better to be that way, in my opinion. So if anybody wants to get, if someone's got a little problem they want to talk about, I'm there to talk to them about it.
Awesome, amazing. So yeah, go reach out to Jonathan. Thank you so much. That was a really interesting conversation. It's always interesting to get that sort of someone that's been through the trenches from go to woe, and the third stuff, and sort of seen how the industry's changed, but also that things also kind of stay the same, right? Principles and foundations.
Exactly, they haven't changed. Yeah,
just the tools and the mechanisms have changed up a little bit in that time, but
that's it. Exactly right, Chris. Spot on.
Appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Been a really interesting episode. Lots in there to dig out wherever you are on your journey. So feel free to watch this a few times and pull out the nuggets. Jonathan, thanks so much for swinging by. Really, really enjoyed it. Thanks for your time.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.